My name is Cristobal, and the technology I chose is the irrigation controller. Since ancient times to the 1900s, many fields were watered with a system of canals and gates to divert water from a source. Inventions such as a sprinkler created the need to have a device to be able to operate sprinklers. Prior to irrigation controllers, people would have to go to each station and manually open each valve and wait many minutes. They would also have to go at specific times or they can induce stress by watering inconsistently. It is very time-consuming to do it this way. Mechanical timers were also used prior to the invention of the controller, but they were also manually operated and they needed to be wound up. Flood irrigation was used prior to the use of sprinklers, and that involved flooding an entire field to saturate the soil of water for the plants. This method of watering wastes thousands and thousands of gallons of water for each cycle. Technology such as sprinklers and rotors were made better and they allowed for a uniform distribution of water. The next logical step was to create a device that controls when and how long the sprinklers and rotors can turn on. The controller was invented to facilitate the use of automation. It is difficult to overwater if you are properly setting up a system. Controllers also save tons of water once properly calibrated. The irrigation controller, like the name suggests, is responsible for controlling the valves that are responsible for releasing water into the irrigation system. There are many brands of controllers ranging from Rainbird, Hunter, and even Toro. But they all achieve the same thing, which is to turn valves on and off. There are even smart controllers that are integrated to the internet and they can do far more. Controllers are also proving to be very important in California, where water is scarce. Because of that fact, the state has some of the strictest water regulations in the nation. Using a controller can help with complying and not go overboard on water use and wasting money. There are also regulations on landscaping laws such as MWELO or other municipal restrictions that can further restrict watering habits. The technology works by being programmed and set up with an irrigation system. It must be wired to the system in order to function by sending electrical impulses to a specific valve to turn it on and off. The electrical impulses magnetize the solenoid in the valve that lift up a plunger and let the water flow freely. Once the cycle is complete, the controller stops the impulses and the solenoid is no longer magnetized, and so the plunger drops and stops the water. Controllers can be improved upon by having add-ons such as rain catchers and even weather stations. But fundamentally, a controller is only limited by the amount of stations and abilities it has. In order to set up a controller, it must be mounted or have a pedestal near the irrigation system it wants to operate. It is preferred if there is a source of electricity nearby to power the controller, but there are also battery-powered ones. The first step is to program the controller with the proper start times, run times, and what zones correspond to what valve. If you choose to purchase more add-ons such as a weather sensor or Wi-Fi capability, you have more possibilities. For example, if you get the Hunter controller with the solar sync system, the controller can make automatic adjustments for the watering cycle based on temperature, precipitation, and humidity. Hunter also has the smart controller integrated with their HydroWise app. The HydroWise app allows the users to program stations and runtimes, turn the system on, and track their watering history all from their phone. If you don't have a smart controller, it will need to be readjusted according to the seasons because some seasons like summer require much more water than other seasons like winter. Technology is used in many applications from residential to commercial uses. A good controller will be on site, but it may be hidden or placed inside a pedestal that is vandal-proof. The technology is used in conjunction with the irrigation system present in the water site, or else it would be useless and just serve as a clock. The Hunter Pro C, which is shown in the slide, is something that a residential owner could purchase and use at home. But believe it or not, it has up to 32 stations that can be connected to it. The controller here is mounted to the wall, but there are no wires connected to the controller yet. The wires would be connected to the controller, and the wires would run down the gray tube down the wall into the ground and go to the valves themselves. The device is autonomous because it uses internal timers and clocks to do it all. The technology is used by many people, from homeowners to farmers. There is no experience requirement to use a controller, and almost anybody can set one up. They are used anywhere that has landscaping, turf, farming, and anything with greenery, so they are pretty important in our everyday lives. Since they are often hidden, it never occurs to some people that they even exist, even though the devices are responsible for keeping everything green. Controllers can have a high initial cost. A residential controller can cost up to $200, but you may only need one or two, depending on how big your stations are. However, they can come even more expensive if they come integrated with technology and add-ons. Commercial controllers with their pedestal can cost up to $2,000. However, once installed and set up, the cost of labor and maintaining them is offset by the automation of the system and only needing to periodically maintain the system. Controllers can also have a high initial labor cost when setting up. They can be expensive to mount because they have to be placed on a vandal-proof case on a concrete pedestal in public places, which can take a lot of man hours, and it can be very time consuming because of the permitting process. But once everything is set up, they will save man hours once the system is automated. The controllers can save lots of water because they are pretty efficient with their water use. They also don't present a large risk in producing runoff and contaminating the environment. Since the materials of the device are pretty cheap and they aren't made from unethical sources, it's pretty safe to say that it's ethical to use a controller. I dare say, because they save so much water, it would be unethical not to use a controller. As I mentioned earlier, many people often use controllers, from homeowners to landscapers, farmers, and even turf managers. Landscapers utilize the controller to irrigate the landscaping they install. By having a controller installed, it helps the landscapers manage their locations and helps to make them look beautiful. If they have smart controllers, they can even link the devices to each other and use their phone as a master controller and have authority over all the controllers that they use. This is very helpful if it rains or if they need to check if the system's working. Many parks and playing fields are irrigated by sprinklers late at night. Parks not only have turf, but they often have shrubs and trees that have different watering requirements than turf that the controller can help. Farmers use the technology to irrigate their crops. Many farmers have hundreds and even thousands of acres that they are using to grow their crops. It would be unfeasible to manually irrigate each field and wait for the entire field to be ready to be watered. Having a controller can help with the uniform distribution of water to make sure there is an even amount of water applied across the whole field. Turf managers from sports fields and golf courses utilize the technology to make the fields playable for athletes and to look aesthetically pleasing. Since these fields are often seen on TV by millions of people, any shortcomings from the grass will be highlighted for the world to see. Golf courses that are seen in the PGA Tour have a standard of being some of the greenest in the world. technology has far more pros than cons. The controllers are able to precisely control how much water is distributed, and that assures not one drop is wasted. Controllers can also have the ability to optimize watering schedules for plants during growth periods to ensure that plants have better growth and possibly a better yield. Because the device automates the process, it also frees up manpower and can help reduce labor costs. Drawbacks of the device are they need electricity or they can be battery powered, but that runs the risk of running out of power. They can have a high initial setup cost because of advanced features and the amount of stations needed. Setting up the controller for the first time or using a different manufacturer's controller can be difficult to get used to at first. It is important to note that the water conservation, optimized watering schedules, and labor costs far outweigh the high initial costs and setup difficulties of the controller. The irrigation controller has succeeded in conserving water, helping the environment, and reducing labor costs. They are utilized almost anywhere in the world, and they won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Controllers are also constantly improving with new functions and integrations.